When did you first become fascinated with the human brain?
Since forever, as far back as I can remember, I've been interested in the human brain. I mean, I was, a thoughtful kid and a bit of an outsider. And you sit there thinking about what the most important things in the world are in your little tiny adolescent brain. And the answer that I came to, that I converged on, was that all of the things you can possibly conceive of as things that are important for human beings to care about are literally contained, in the skull, both the perception of them and their relative values and, the solutions to all our problems, and all of our problems are all contained in the skull. And if we knew more about how that worked, how the brain encodes information and generates desires and generates agony and suffering, we could do more about it. You think about all the really great triumphs in human history. You think about all the really horrific tragedies. You think about the Holocaust. You think about any prison full of human stories, and all of those problems boil down to neurochemistry. So if you get a little bit of control over that, you provide people the option to do better. And in the way I read history, the way people have dealt with having better tools is that they most often, in the end, do better, with huge asterisks. But I think it's an interesting, a worthy, and noble pursuit to give people more options, more tools.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way to look at human history. You just imagine all these neurobiological mechanisms, Stalin, Hitler, all of these, Genghis Khan, all of them just had like a brain. It's just a bunch of neurons, like a few tens of billions of neurons, gaining a bunch of information over a period of time. They have a set of module that does language and memory and all that. And from there, in the case of those people, they're able to murder millions of people.
Yeah.
And all that coming from, there's not some glorified notion of a dictator of this enormous mind or something like this. It's just the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that has to do with how well people like that can organize those around them.
Other brains.
Yeah. And so I always find it interesting to look to primatology, look to our closest non-human relatives for clues as to how humans are going to behave and what particular humans are able to achieve. And so you look at chimpanzees and bonobos, and they're similar but different in their social structures, particularly. And I went to Emory in Atlanta and studied under Frans de Waal, the great Frans de Waal, who was kind of the leading primatologist, who recently died. And his work at looking at chimps through the lens of, how you would watch an episode of Friends and understand the motivations of the characters interacting with each other. He would look at a chimp colony and basically apply that lens. I'm massively oversimplifying it. If you do that, instead of just saying, subject 473, through his feces, it's subject 471, you talk about them in terms of their human struggles, accord them the dignity of themselves as actors with understandable goals and drives, what they want out of life. And primarily it's, the things we want out of life: food, sex, companionship, power. You can understand chimp and bonobo behavior in the same lights much more easily. And I think doing so gives you the tools you need to reduce human behavior from the kind of false complexity that we layer onto it with language, and look at it in terms of, these humans are looking for companionship, sex, food, power. And I think that's a pretty powerful tool to have in understanding human behavior.
And I just went to the Amazon jungle for a few weeks, and it's a very visceral reminder that a lot of life on Earth is just trying to get laid.
Yeah.
They're all screaming at each other.
Yeah.
Like I saw a lot of monkeys, and they're just trying to impress each other. Or maybe there's a battle for power, but a lot of the battle for power has to do with them getting laid.
Right. Breeding rights often go with alpha status. And so if you can get a piece of that, then you're going to do okay.
And would like to think that we're somehow fundamentally different, but especially when it comes to primates, we really aren't, we can use fancier poetic language, but maybe some of the underlying drives that motivate us are similar.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And all of that is coming from the brain.